Welcome everyone to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is June 23rd, 2022. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let us know. This meeting of the ZBA is being conducted remotely in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and shall afford adequate alternative means of public access via Microsoft Teams by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. Then you have to punch in the ID number for the conference, which is 503-576-179, then hit the pound. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue/hearing or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. To begin with, we will have a roll call of all members to authorize this hybrid form of meeting. And I'll start with the gentleman on my far right.
James Upson, and I'm in favor of this format.
William Grau, I approve the format.
Megan Story, I approve.
Paul C. Semple, I approve.
I'm David S. Nixon, I approve.
David R. Thompson, I approve.
Randy Potash, approve.
And David H. Reach, I approve.
I would ask that any non-board members who wish to participate via the phone, when you do, and you would be recognized first by the lady to my right, Sarah B. Clark, please give us your name and the last four digits of your phone number for ID purposes. The way the meeting is conducted today, first of all, the hearing notice will be read by Sarah B. Clark. She's the Town of Chatham's PPO. That's the Principal Permitting Officer. After that, there would be a presentation either by the applicant themselves or by their agent. When they were done, I would ask for anybody, either here or on Microsoft Teams, who wishes to speak in favor of the appeal to do so. And you would do by flashing a little hand that you have on the screen if you are somewhere out there. I would then read any and all letters that we received, whether it be pro or con. Following that, I would ask for anybody who wishes to speak either against the appeal or has a specific question. This is their time. And again, we need to recognize you either by your hand or on the Microsoft Teams. When that's all done, the applicant may very well wish to rebut some testimony or questions that had come up. Then we would have questions from the board members themselves. When we were done, we would then close the public hearing and go into deliberation. Deliberation is not open to the public unless you are introduced into the discussion by a member of this board. We would then vote, and voting in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you need a supermajority to be successful. In our case, since there are 5 votes, you need to get 4, not 3, 4 to agree with you. Voting today will be Buck Upson, Paul Semple, myself, and the 2 Daves over here. Sarah, let's, we ought to do the approval of the minutes from June 19th. Paul?
I'll move to approve the minutes of June 9th, 2022.
And Dave Reach seconds.
It needs a vote. Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Yes, Paul votes yes.
Dave Thompson, yes.
Dave Reach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, we will start today by going to 22-006. Sarah?
Application number 22-006. Casa Investments, Inc., care of William F. Riley, Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 322 and 324 Bridge Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 16B, Block 13, Lot 4A. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change two nonconforming dwellings on a nonconforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwellings and shed and the construction of two new dwellings and a garage. The existing dwelling at 322 Bridge Street is nonconforming in that it is located 15.6 feet from the road, 24.9 feet from the westerly abutter, and has a building height of 30.5 feet. The existing dwelling at 324 Bridge Street is nonconforming in that it is located 15.1 feet from the westerly abutter. The existing shed is nonconforming in that it is located 6.9 feet from the westerly abutter. The proposed dwelling at 322 Bridge Street will be nonconforming in that it will be located 15.6 feet from the road where a 40-foot setback is required, 13.4 feet from the westerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required, and have a building height of 31.6 feet where 30 feet is the maximum allowed. The proposed dwelling at 324 Bridge Street will be nonconforming in that it will be located 13.8 feet from the westerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed garage will be nonconforming in that it will be located 18.1 feet from the westerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 23,724 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in an R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protective Bylaw. This was continued from February 24th and April 14th, 2022.
Is there a representative of the applicant in the audience? Please go to the microphone. Your choice.
Okay. Stephen Vancasa, owner of 324 Bridge Street. I'm here with my wife. Evidently, there was a disconnect with my team members that the plans didn't get sent out. I had thought the plans get sent out. Obviously, I drove here to be for this meeting here, and so I guess the plans are not here, so I'm going to ask for a continuance, and I apologize to the board for that. I will follow up next time to make sure the plans are in the required time. So I ask for a continuance, please.
Okay, Sarah, what would be the best date?
The earliest I can continue to is August 25th.
August 24th.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, David,
Yes.
I believe this is the third request for a continuance. And sometimes in the past, in order to help the applicant out and reduce the pressure of meeting the deadline, we add a couple of extra months to the push out. I don't know if that's appropriate this time, but it's a suggestion.
Well, let me ask Mr. Benincasa, okay? Do you see any reason why this can't be presented by your team on August 25th?
So there's been an extraordinary amount of permitting and acquisitions in the last year or two due to all the circumstances. So, you know, we did wait longer to get our plans together, and I wanted to work with certain people, and so I worked with their time schedule. I could have hired people from off Cape and come in with a plan, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't like that. I really like the work that my team members put together, and I hope that you will like that, and I hope that you will approve it because of that. So I'm stuck on the team I have and the time schedule I have. The work is all done now. And, you know, I can reach out to my abutters. I see my abutters counsel is here. I'm happy to reach out and converse with him, to work with my neighbors and to get a plan that the community is going to like and my abutters are going to like also. So the plans are done. And the short of it, I think we're ready now, and I will make sure we're ready as soon as date is possible, please.
Okay, I can see a problem that the counsel for the abutters, Mr. Litchfield, is here, and I know from the past that he typically is gone the end of August. So I would say, Mr. Litchfield, is this date a conflict for you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield. I do represent several abutters, and unfortunately, I cannot be present on August 25. Any other day before or after that, but August 25 is impossible for me to be here, and given that my clients have been involved in this since January or February, they would like representation.
So that would push us, Mr. Benincasa, to September 8th.
So Well, that's fairly quick then. I could work with that. I was gonna suggest that I could work with Mr. Litchfield, or my attorney work with Mr. Litchfield, and then if he agreed to go with if he was not in agreement, then I would postpone to August 25th. But September 8th is close.
that all
I think
right?
we'll just go with that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I wanna work with my neighbors.
Okay, and I should tell the board members that, as you know, in these situations where it gets dragged out, the applicant needs to file with us an amendment to the extended time limits so that we don't get caught by the Commonwealth's time. And Sarah shows that on today's date, Mr. Riley, who I think was the attorney for this, I don't know if he still is or not, but he signed it. And that extends our decision time as late as November 21st. So, okay. All right. So,
If I understand the representation, then they will be ready to go on September 8th, and I assume there would be no further continuances.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll move to grant the continuance to September 8th, 2022.
we need a vote on that. Buck?
Dave H. seconds.
Buck votes,
Sorry.
It's all right.
Second? Thank you. Mr. Veach?
and I have vote yes.
Paul?
All votes yes?
Dave Thompson says yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Benincasa. Okay, Sarah, 22-043, please.
Application number 22-043, Town of Chatham, care of Dr. Robert Duncanson, 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 29 Meeting House Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 4E, Block 10, Lot 9. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance from the required abutter setback for the construction of a public utility building and the installation of exterior mechanical system appliances. The proposed sewer pump station will be located 10.9 feet from the westerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed generator will be located 8.8 feet, and the proposed AC condenser will be located 10.6 feet from the westerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the protective bylaw. Under application number 22-044, the applicant seeks a special permit to construct an 18-foot by 18-foot public utility building as allowed by special permit under Section 3C1C7 of the bylaw. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, and Section 8D2B of the protective bylaw.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission. Robert Duncanson, Director of Health and Natural Resources for the Town of Chatham. As Sarah just eloquently explained, we are seeking variances for the construction of another wastewater pump station. This is part of the continuation of the comprehensive wastewater management plan that we've been working on implementing since roughly 2009. This pump station will enable us to extend sewers down Route 137 or Meeting House Road, as well as Morton Road, as well as Commerce Park, ultimately, as well as a number of the side streets that are off Meeting House Road and Morton Road, which will ultimately all come into this pump station by gravity, and then from there, it will be pumped across Route 137, down the bike path into the wastewater treatment facility. We picked this piece of property because it is the low point in that area. The site itself is also a bowl. You may remember this property was bought by the town about 15, 18 years ago, potentially to be used for a new South Chatham fire station. It has frontage on both Meeting House Road as well as Route 28. It is relatively level on the Route 28 side, but then as you go up Meeting House Road, the elevation of Meeting House Road goes up, but this property stays pretty level. So when you get all the way to the back corner, basically the northwest corner, where the pump station is going to be, that's basically a low area compared to the adjoining properties, both to the north, which is the podiatrist office, as well as on the west side. So basically, that back corner, that northwest corner is the lowest point in that area. And then from there, it basically goes up in a fairly steep grade on the shown picture to the left. And then you've got the podiatrist office and then ultimately the bike path. And then on the south side, or on the west side, again, the elevation goes up to the adjoining property. So the pump station would be sited down at the low point. There will be a need for a retaining wall, which will be facing in towards the property. So basically, the other properties would all be looking above and across the pump station because it'll be sited down in this low area on the property. And you can see by the access road coming in, even Route 137, that's going to be a fairly significant grade change to get the road in. But we did that on purpose to leave the area where the old N-Star Eversource equipment used to be, which is those boxes shown on the plan, for a future South Chatham Fire Station if the town ever did decide to build one. Because ultimately, that's what the property was built for. As you know, the current South Chatham Fire Station is basically a garage further down Route 28, which right now is too small to house any of the modern equipment the town has. So there was a study done a number of years ago. This site was identified as a future site. But then subsequent to that, the main station was enlarged. And so right now there's no need for a new fire station in this area. But we did site the pump station tucked into this corner specifically to leave as much of the property open and available if, the town ever did decide to move forward. And that was also partially what drove the roadway access design. So that if they did build a fire station, it would probably be a drive-through building, so you'd be able to drive down the access road through the fire station and then exit straight out, say onto Route 28. As I said, there will be a retaining wall along the south and west sides because of the significant grade changes. That retaining wall wouldn't be visible from the adjoining properties because basically they will be up and above, and this retaining wall is really just to allow us to get this pump station as much into the corner as we can and not have it out in the center part of the property. There will be, as indicated, an AC unit, and there will be an emergency generator, which are standards at all our various pump stations for obvious reasons. If there is a power failure, we still want to be able to pump wastewater to the plant and not have any problems with backups in people's houses and whatnot. And the AC unit is because the pumps and all, there will be a building at this site, and I believe you also were provided these sections of what the building will look like. It will look pretty much similar to what our other pump station buildings have looked like at Lime Hill and some of the other locations where we've built them, basically a Cape Cod garage look, if you will, cedar shingles on the sides, roof, and then, white trim, pretty standard for the look to make it blend in with the community as much as possible. In this case, all the pumps and all will be housed inside the building, as opposed to some of the ones that we've talked to you recently about, and the one that will be the second hearing today where the pump station would not have a building because of the site, the size of the site. Here we chose to put the building in and basically house pretty much everything inside the building to reduce the impact on people driving by and the abutters and whatnot. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone here today or in the Microsoft team world that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate now.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, then I will read the correspondence. First, we have a memo. This is from Judith Georgia. She's the health agent for the town of Chatham. She writes on 6/15, I have reviewed the plan to vary the sideline setback requirements for the exterior mechanical system appliances sewer pump station at this property. I have no concerns about the proposal. Then we have a note. This is from Michelle Clark. She writes on June 21st. She writes, both 29 Meeting House Road and 2 Twine Field Drive are on the June 27th Planning Board agenda for review. I will provide comments from that board after their meeting. Then we have a letter. This letter is from David J. Farrell Jr. He writes on June 23rd. Work commenced yesterday clearing the land and continues as I write prior to this afternoon's public hearing. The town has jumped the gun. My primary concern is with the purported, quote, installation of exterior mechanical system appliances, end of quote, and their visibility at any time of the year from adjacent Meeting House Road and Main Street, and even the bike trail, but most particularly from my home office / at 2355 Main Street, where I have resided for 31 years. Besides a generator and AC condenser, it is unclear to me from sheet number, and he lists the sheet, whether other, in quote, exterior mechanical system appliances, end of quote, are contemplated. Respectfully, I register my vehement objection to anything visible or remotely similar to those in the attached photo of the northwest end of Meeting House Road. I have not seen anything else like that in the rest of town and cannot comprehend why there is no fencing to obscure the fire engine red crane and its mechanical prong, which is sometimes attached. It is an unsightly, distasteful entrance to South Chatham, and if there is any attempt to repeat those mechanics at 29 Meeting House Road in plain view without fencing and lush vegetation, I will pursue all legal remedies. I look forward to your reasonable response to my concerns this afternoon. And that is the extent. There is a picture. I will pass them around if anybody cares what he's talking about. Okay, everybody said, okay, fine. Okay, that is the extent of the correspondence. I would ask now for anyone either here or on Microsoft Teams who wishes to speak either against or has a specific question, to please do so. Is there anyone here? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, I'm David Farrell. You just read my letter at 2355 Main Street. I didn't know whether I should come up in your earlier question and say I support this. I'm not opposed to tucking it away in the northwest corner, but I think I made very clear that the large red scooper that is up on north on 137, in looking at the plans for that construction site, I didn't see anything like that on the plans. And I know we wouldn't have that sort of contraption on Shore Road or Stage Harbor Road. I just want to make sure that there's not going to be anything like that at 29 Meeting House Road.
Okay, do you have any other concerns or questions?
That's really what it comes down to.
Fine, okay.
Okay, I can address Mr. previous Farrell's comment, sorry. I was looking at your letterhead and there was a couple names there.
That's the first one.
Yeah. There will not be the gantry crane at this site that you saw, or that is currently present at the pump station 6 at north end of Meeting House Road. That was a particular situation. We did not build a large building at that site and put the pumps inside. In this case, the pumps and all will be inside the building, so there will not be the need for that gantry crane at this site. And I have to agree with Mr. Farrell, with 2020 hindsight, we did a poor job of screening that other site. I'm gonna be working with the engineers to look at that and improve the screening there, because trust me, I've driven by it every day since we finished building it. And I'm like, we need to do better. And as if you've seen our other pump station sites around town that we've built recently, in most cases, if you drive by, you wouldn't even know they were there. That one clearly is not appropriate, and we will be remedying that situation. But for this specific site, there will be no gantry crane. The guts of the operation will be inside the building. The AC unit will be outside. The emergency generator will be outside for obvious reasons. We're going to leave predominantly most of the vegetation on the Meeting House Road side as well as the Route 28 side, except obviously where they cut the driveway in will be left intact. And then, as I said, this is down in this hollow on that particular piece of property. And, you know, as things get further down the road, if we find there's a need for additional plantings and screenings, because, you know, certain trees were removed and now you can view the site, we will obviously do that, as we have done at our other pump stations around Chatham.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Geisler. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Anybody, Sarah, on Microsoft Teams?
I do not see anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition or has a question.
Okay, then we'll have questions from the board. Bob?
No questions.
Bill?
I know that they're out there clearing the property today. Was it necessary to clear the entire property? Is that like, with the thought being that perhaps there would be a fire station down the line down there, or, you know, I'm just trying to get a better feel for that.
No, there was no thought that clearing anything for a future fire station. If they have cleared the entire property, I will be having a conversation with them, because they were not supposed to clear that much, other than obviously, you know, there is a fair amount of disturbance to get the pump station in, as well as the sewer lines. And so, you know, when you start factoring that in and how, you know, the size of the equipment needed to do it, sometimes that does result in more clearing than you would hope, just because of the size of the equipment working on the site. So if there has been more clearing that was inappropriate, as I said, we will address that before we finish the project.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like they were clearing it right to 28, so.
Yeah, when I went by earlier this week, it didn't look bad, but it may have changed in the last day or so. I haven't driven by it today, so. Okay, then I will make sure I drive by on my way home today, and then we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was a grading issue, you know, if you needed the dirt to offset something.
No, I mean, there is fairly significant grade change there, and primarily that's for the retaining, that's why we need the retaining wall. But in terms of clearing, I suspect it was just, you know, to get the pipes in the ground and everything, this is how much space we need for the equipment to work in, so. But
That's all I
we'll
had.
address that
Okay,
as
thank
needed.
Was there someone who had their hand raised?
Mr. Gregg?
Jeff Gregg from GHD is our engineer.
Yes.
Okay, there he is.
Oh, sorry about that.
Did you want to speak to that question?
I just wanted to clarify on there is a section out towards 28 that will have gravity sewer that's installed for future connection, and that's why it is being proposed to clear out to 28, but the intent was to leave where Bob had showed the area where the old NSTAR or Eversource substation was, and up towards that intersection. The intent was not to clear all the way, all the trees to that corner. So as Bob said, he'll take a look at that as well.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I wanted to
Thank
offer
you.
on that.
Anyone else on this subject? Either here or out there? Okay. Megan?
I suppose my first question is taken care of, but I would take a good look at that, because lucky for you, I live there and it's very clear.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. My first question was along the lines of Dr. Farrell. I'm not going to lie. I think that what is on 137 is shameful, and unfortunately, it looks like you did it because it's 137 and who cares? But there are a lot of us who live in South Chatham who don't feel that way, so that needs to be addressed. And I'm kind of uncomfortable approving this one potentially, but more so the other one today, just because of that. Because I looked at the plans when it came out too, and it didn't look that bad, and now it does not look great. My only other question is, are there gonna be alarms attached to this pump station that could potentially go off? I'm asking for a reason because they go off in South Chatham all the time. Took me like a year to figure out it wasn't someone's car alarm. So we need to address that, because they go on for like a half an hour, not like.
When you say they go off in South Chatham all the time, where are you
I
referring
think,
to?
well, I can't determine whether or not, I think it's the actual wastewater treatment plant.
Facility?
Yeah. But it could, that's why I'm asking if this is gonna create another alarm.
The facility will have alarms. It will have a computerized control system with alarms. You shouldn't be hearing any alarms, however, because when something goes into fault and sets off an alarm,
Someone should come to it, I'm sure.
yeah, basically, it's all done through computers, and the alarms go off on cell phones now.
So they don't go off, you can't
So
hear
they-
them?
They shouldn't be going off externally to the point where you could hear them. We do have, at the pump stations, we do have warning lights that will go off. So if the station goes into alarm, sometimes there'll be like a red strobe light or something like that that would go off.
Yeah,
So that, the police driving by or a neighbor driving by, if they see that, they could call. But you shouldn't hear an alarm itself.
I
Because
think it's coming from the actual big station, not the little station. But they're pretty close together, so it's kinda hard to tell.
All right, I will check
Just
into
take a
that
peek, yeah,
because-
there's something strange going on
Yeah,
there.
because I've never heard that we've had any issues with any external sounding alarms. They're
Okay.
all-
Yeah, it's
they're all
possible
done
it's
through the
something
SCADA
else
system, which is
entirely, but.
computerized. And they're
Oh,
connected
the
to,
what, he's, it's the engineer again.
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, the stations are designed without horn, so we
Yeah.
specifically state that we do not install a horn. So there is, as Bob indicated, a red alarm light, but there is no audible alarm
Great. Fantastic.
that was designed for those.
Good, thank you. All set?
Yeah, I think that's it.
And I will follow up to find out,
Yeah.
maybe you and I should talk offline. You
Yeah.
can tell me when you're hearing it and then I can,
Yeah, sure.
because you shouldn't be hearing anything even from the plant itself.
Paul?
Doctor, you're looking for a relief on the setback requirement. Do you know what the setback requirement is there?
25 feet?
Okay. And you're going to be at 10 feet. Have you had any feedback from the abutters that you are going to be closer to than normal?
No. We have had a significant amount of conversation with the doctor who owns the podiatrist's office to the north, between there and the bike path. Because we actually had to deal with him to get some easements because he owns, believe it or not, he actually owns a small section of the bike path. For whatever reason, the town didn't, anyway, it's a long story. So we've been dealing with him quite a bit about this. He's aware of the project. We've met with him several times, reviewed the plans with him. He has no issues with the plans per se. He was just concerned to make sure that there was no impacts to his parking lot or his access or anything like that during construction. And we've also talked with him because obviously, because he's right adjacent to it, we want to make sure we get his property connected up to the sewer. So we've talked with him about how we would route the lines into his property and where his septic system is and things like that. But other than that, I haven't heard from any of the abutters.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Dave T.
Dave T. has no questions.
Randy?
Thank you. So because this is a variance, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to go through the criteria.
Okay? Sarah, do you have them? I don't have them with me right at the moment. Sorry.
It's on the top half of that page right
Okay, owing to circumstances relating to soil conditions, shape, or topography of the land or structures, and especially affecting such land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it's located. Well, obviously here, we're dealing with a public utility to serve the greater good of the community at large. As I indicated at the beginning, we have sited the pump station at the lowest point in the area, which is where sewage flows downhill, just like water. So we always need to put the pump stations at the lowest point in the available area. We did site this one so that we can pick up not only Morton Road, Meeting House Road, but also ultimately South Chatham across Route 28. So between Route 28 and Nantucket Sound, that whole area at some point will also be sewered and will feed into this pump station. So we tried to accommodate that. I will tell you, as you probably are aware, the town is buying the church property on the other side of the bike path. And so I said, great, maybe we can site the pump station there. We actually did look at that property. However, as I said, Meeting House Road goes uphill from Route 28, and the elevation just didn't work. Because the elevation was so much higher of the ground surface, the wet well, which is into which the sewage pours, would have had to be extremely deep. And as you know, when you dig deep in sandy soil on the Cape Cod, the hole gets bigger and bigger, wider. And so unfortunately, that site didn't turn out to be viable. So that's one of the reasons why this site was chosen. Plus, it's town property. We always try to site pump stations on town property whenever we can. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance bylaw is substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, to the petitioner. Again, it's a wastewater pump station. We need to put it at the lowest point in the system. That's why we cited it where we did on the property, to minimize impacts to the abutters, to maximize the ability to go deep without having to go extraordinarily deep in terms of digging that hole for the wet well. So it was, all those factors came into play, and so that was the best location. As well as I indicated, preserving the vast majority of the site for future town use, for a fire station or whatever else, they may contemplate at some point in the future. That desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating the intent or purpose of the bylaw. The answer to that is this is a public project for a public sewer. It is intended primarily for the greater good of the community. So those would be my responses to those.
Thank you for putting that on the record.
Okay.
Dave Each.
I have no questions, Dave.
Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations. Excuse me. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Each seconds.
Need a vote on that, Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
All votes yes.
Dave T?
Dave T says yes.
Dave E?
Dave Each votes yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, deliberations. We'll start with Bill.
Well, when I listened to your answer about the criteria and the variance, associated with the variance, and the variance can be a difficult thing to get here. 15 feet, and can I pose a question to him?
Sure.
15 feet either way off that westerly line, you felt like that had enough of a grade difference in the pump station that it would affect it?
Yes, and it would put the pump station pretty much kind of out in the middle of the parcel where the access road comes down, as well as, and that would potentially impede, future use of the property for a fire station if that was ever, or some other. So that's why we tried to tuck it into the corner as much as we could to leave the vast majority of that parcel untouched.
Yeah.
Not only for screening of butters, but also for potential future use.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
Megan?
I appreciate that it's tucked into the corner, recognizing that it requires a variance for that. I still think that that's a good idea, given the fact that it's a large parcel and there is the opportunity to do some other things with it. I will also say that I live sort of on the same plane, I don't know how you describe it, and my yard literally goes like this, so I can kind of see where that would happen. So if I were voting, I would certainly vote yes.
Paul?
Yes, I think as to the special permit, I think it clearly qualifies for the special permit, and to the variance, I think the category of variance does require topography and so forth as an issue, and I think it exists in this situation. So I intend to vote favorably with respect to both requests.
Dave T?
I agree with Mr. Semple. I am going to vote yes on both of your requests. It's logical. It needs to be done. And I have a great deal of faith in the engineering department of the town of Chatham to do the right thing.
Randy?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with my colleagues, and I would also say that when you look at the bylaw, it also abides by the purpose and intent of the bylaw regarding the health, welfare, and quality life of the citizens of Chatham. So I would vote yes if I were voting.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with the previous, and I will be supporting this.
And I have nothing more to add, but I will support it.
Okay. Paul?
I think we need to take two votes here.
Yes,
So
we do.
I will move first to approve the request for a special permit under 22-044. I think the qualifications are there for it, and I assume in doing this work that you're able to do it on-site. It won't run into problems in terms of traffic flow and
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why the clearing took place when it did, because the contractor was able to line up the sub to do the clearing. Their intent is to work on this site over the summer because it is off the road. Obviously, none of the road construction will take place until the fall, but because the pump stations are off the road themselves, the contractor's able to work there throughout the summer season.
Okay, I'll move to approve the application as submitted with respect to the special permit.
Dave, each seconds.
Need a vote? Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
All votes yes?
Dave
T.
Thompson votes yes.
Evie?
Dave each votes yes.
And I vote yes, that's a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Secondly, with respect to the request for a variance under 22-043, it seems to me the requirements for a variance have been satisfied by the town, and I would move to approve that also.
And Dave each seconds that.
Needs a vote again. Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Paul votes yes?
Dave T?
Dave T votes yes.
Dave each votes yes.
And I vote yes, that is also unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's number one. Okay, Sarah, 22-045, please.
Application number 22-045, Town of Chatham, care of Dr. Robert Duncanson, 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 2 Twinefield Drive, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 3E, Block 67, Lot E2. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance from the required road setback for the construction of a public utility building and the installation of an exterior mechanical system appliance. The proposed sewer pump station will be located 9.7 feet from Morton Road and partially within the road layout of Twinefield Drive. The generator will also be located partially within the road layout where a 40-foot setback is required. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the protective bylaw. Under application number 22-046, the applicant seeks a special permit to construct a public utility facility as allowed by special permit under Section 3C1C7 of the bylaw. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, and Section 8D2B of the protective bylaw.
Okay, Robert Duncanson, Director of Health and Natural Resources for the Town of Chatham. This is another pump station. This is part of the same system that we just talked about with the previous one. This will collect wastewater coming down Morton Road. It will be collected at this pump station. It will then be pumped along the bike path, underneath the bike path in a force main, down to Meeting House Road, where it will then flow into the pump station that you just approved, and then pumped from there to the wastewater treatment plant. While we think of Chatham as relatively flat, when you start moving water around, it is not flat, and so we have to have multiple pump stations. This one is a little bit different than the last one, because this one, the low point is right at the bike path where it meets Morton Road. And so in trying to site it, we were restrained on the bottom side or the south side by the bike path and on the north side by Twinefield Drive. And so this one does not have a building. It doesn't have a driveway or anything like that associated with it. This is very similar to the one that we talked with your board about previously, the Queen Anne pump station that we're relocating from the current site across the street. Basically, we have the wet well, which is that circular structure that we have in the other Meeting House pump station, but it's partially inside the building. In this case, the wet well will be outside. It only sticks up about 6 inches or so above grade. The rest of the wet well is it's basically a concrete cylinder. 99% of it is below grade, but that's into which the wastewater pours. Then the pumps, in this case, instead of being inside a building, they will be inside the green fiberglass doghouse that we described for you at the Queen Anne Pump Station, similar to the one that we have right down the road here behind the animal control building and the shellfish shed. Basically, it's a 6 by 6 by 7 foot fiberglass enclosure. The pumps and all are housed in that enclosure. And then they reach down into the wet well, they suck the wastewater out, and then they pump it down through the force main. In addition to that, like the other pump station, there will be an emergency generator. And there will also be some electrical panels that, similar to the ones that we did at Queen Anne, because normally in the other stations, those are inside the building. In this case, they will be mounted outside. But we tried to put everything we need to in that space between the bike path and the paved area of Twinefield Drive, which is what you see here. We do have that area on the west side, which is a bunch of little tiny squares. That is a porous paver pull-off area, because as I've described to you before, each one of the pump stations, even though they're fully computerized and fully alarmed, we are required by DEP to visit each pump station once a day, irregardless. We're hoping that sooner or later that will change as a state requirement, just because everything now is computerized and you pull everything up on your phone and whatnot. So we do have that porous pavement area there where a small pickup truck, when they come to do their checks, will be able to pull off Morton Road and get out of the way and not impede the bike path or anything as well. The lines, as you can see in the two big black circles, those are manholes that are out in the road, and then the lines connecting those are the gravity sewer lines coming into the pump station. And then, as I said, the force main is that dotted line that comes out, runs along the bike path all the way down to Meeting House. This one will have a fence around it. We will landscape as much as possible, but given the fact that we are so close to the bike path and Twinefield on the north side, opportunities will be limited, but we are still planning to landscape around it as much as possible. So, plus it'll have a fence around it, so we won't have the same issue that we've described earlier with the other station on Meeting House. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone, either here or on Microsoft Teams, who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate now.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First, we have a note from Judith Giorgio, health agent. She writes on 6/15, I have reviewed the plan to vary the sideline setback requirements for the exterior mechanical system appliances sewer pump station at this property. I have no concerns. And then again from Michelle Clark, it's the same note stating that the planning board agenda has this listed for June 27th. There's nothing else. Is there anyone here or in Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against this application or has a specific question? If so, please indicate now. A gentleman? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Kevin Byrne. I'm a 30-year owner of 153 Morton Road in South Chatham, and I abut the south side of the bike path. The appeal did not have a rendering of the building that was discussed in the written appeal, so I wasn't sure what I was going to be looking at, as the front of my house would be looking directly across at this particular building and mechanical facility. I think just in listening to Dr. Donaldson, my biggest concern, other than visually, is that quite often, probably 4 or 5 times a day in the summer, there'll either be a squeal of brakes or a loud car horn coming down the hill of Morton Road with people on the bike path. And not knowing the size of the building, and now you said it is 6 feet, 7 feet high?
Yeah, I think it's about 6.5.
Okay, and it's less than 10 feet from the road?
No, the building itself will be further back from the road. It was just sorry. That's okay. Again, it's not a building, it's just a fiberglass I call it a doghouse, but it's basically just a fiberglass structure. And that is gonna be located way back over here. So it's probably close to 30 feet off the road.
Okay. Yeah, so sitting here, other than now I understand where the building's gonna be and how big it is, like I said, my biggest concern was just the safety of the bicyclists, because it's an ongoing problem. You know, once a summer, they'll put the radar gun out there and people will slow down for a few days, but it doesn't last long. Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak or has us on this with either an objection or a specific question? I don't see anyone, Sarah?
I see no one that has a question or wishes to speak.
Okay, we'll have questions from the board. Megan?
I'm amazed you can fit it in that tiny little spot, but other than that, I don't really have any questions.
Paul?
I will ask, I guess, what are your thoughts about when you're going to do this in terms of, there's a lot of activity on Morton Road, as you know, aside from the summertime.
The contractor is probably out there maybe today or later this week to take out, there's 1 or 2 trees that have to come out. They were gonna try to take those out. Again, because we're not working on the road, we're allowing them to work over this summer. We have been very clear with them, including in the contract documents, about impacting the bike path. They will have to keep the bike path open at all times while they're working. So we recognize that there's other issues here besides just vehicle traffic because it's so close to the bike path. But I suspect that, you know, they'll probably start most of their work over at the Meeting House Road site just because it's further off the road and a little bit more secluded. But, you know, I think they'll try to do as much work here as they can over the summer as well, within the parameters that we've given them about not impacting bike access and things like that.
So where would they be putting their equipment? If they're not on the bike path and they're not on Twinefield Road Drive?
They'll be in kind of that little gap area between the bike path and pavement of Twinefield. There's not much there, and they may find that they just can't keep their equipment there, so they may wait to do most of their work until the fall when things have quieted down a bit.
Their solution to that would not be to just put it on Twinefield Drive.
No. No.
All right. I don't think I have any other questions.
I have no questions, Dr. Duncanson.
Can you just briefly go through the criteria?
Sure.
You can do it abridged if you'd like, but I think it's important for you to do that, especially since it's a completely
Yeah.
different location for the
Yep.
benefit of the citizens over there.
Owing to circumstances related to soil conditions, shape, or topography of the land or structures, and especially affecting such land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district. You know, again, this is a public works project. It's trying to meet the needs of the community and the public overall. We are, again, this is the low point in the area, and we are constrained by the amount of space that we have between the existing bike path and Twinefield. So we've tried to, you know, as Ms. Story alluded to, the engineers are very good at trying to shoehorn what we need into the space we have, because this is one site where we just didn't have space. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance or bylaw would have substantial hardship, financial or otherwise. You know, again, low point in the system, it's where we need to site the pump station in order to make the system work overall for the community. That desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or without nullifying or substantially derogating the intent or purpose of the bylaw. Again, I think, you know, this is a public works project for the good of the community, which is exactly the kind of things that variances were supposed to be granted for. You know, something that benefits the overall community as opposed to any single individual. Okay?
Dave?
Thank you.
I have no questions, Dave.
Bob?
And I have no questions.
Bill?
I see in your application, it says the parcel is 7.3 acres. What's the boundaries of the actual parcel?
The actual boundaries of the parcel go up Twinefield Road, make a turn, and then it's the entire area there that used to be called the Twinefield. That was purchased by the town a number of years ago, and it got its name because that's where the fishermen used to take and spread out their nets to let them dry and then treat them. And so the town bought that parcel 7 or 8 years ago now, I think. As open space, we go in and mow it once or twice a year. That's the entirety of the parcel. And it does back up to the property just to the east of that big rectangle. That's the property the town's in the process of buying that's gonna be used for affordable housing. We didn't want to tuck it up any further into the property and get into the conservation area. Plus, it doesn't work, once you start going up in elevation, it doesn't work for wastewater. So this was the optimum place to site it.
Well, that was helpful. Thanks, Sarah. Is Twinefield Road a public road or a private road?
Twinefield Road is private,
It is.
yes. Yeah, and we have actually taken an easement on Twinefield
Oh.
for the wastewater project.
Okay, that's all.
We generally take easements on all the private roads.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Baca Farus.
Paul approves.
Dave G. approves.
And I approve.
And I approve. So, deliberations, Paul.
Well, once again, I think this meets the criteria for a special permit, and given its location and the low point, pumping station seems to make sense from a dimensional variance viewpoint, so I will be voting affirmative on these two actions.
Dave T.
I echo what Paul said, and I also will be voting in favor.
Randy?
And if I were voting, I'd vote in favor, but I think I would put in the provision, I'd ask for a provision that you wait until the fall to do it, given that that bike path is pretty busy in the summer, and that's why people pay a lot of money to come here.
Dave Veach, I'm in agreement with what Paul said, and would be supporting it.
Do you have any opinion on what Randy suggested?
I don't, I'm not, I don't use the bike path myself that much. I don't really know the circumstances. I know it's tight quarters, because when I went down there to look at it, somebody was parked right at the end of Plainfield Drive, and I just kind of cruised by it, but I don't know enough to have an opinion about it.
Buck?
I agree that it meets the criteria for meeting the special permit and the variance, and I think Randy raises a good point, and I would support this project.
Bill?
Yeah, I would agree. I think what Randy says makes sense. I mean, the bike path is really busy, especially now. And to wait till Labor Day would be, I think, advisable.
Megan?
I would fully support the project. I very, very strongly agree with Randy. I walk that area, contrary to what it may appear, on a regular basis, and it's crowded, and that Morton Road is busy, really busy in the summer, and I, again, have the experience of the aforementioned building in a somewhat busy area on 137, and it was a nightmare, and if we have to do that in the middle of the summer, it's never gonna work.
Well, I agree that Randy had a great suggestion as far as the condition.
In terms of conditions, I also agree that there needs to be conditions. I drive that road probably on a daily basis, and the person parked in the Twinefield Drive, I'm sure, was probably waiting for the school bus, as she usually does. And there's an awful lot of traffic on Morton Road that is just cutting across there to get to Meeting House. So I think if I'm inclined to approve, I would approve with conditions that would say all construction activity and vehicles would be contained on site, that between June 30th and Labor Day, there would be no exterior construction allowed, No work would be permitted on weekends, and construction activity would be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only. On those conditions, I would move to first approve the request for a special permit under 22-046.
Dave each seconds.
Okay, we need a vote.
Buck
Buck?
approves.
Paul approves.
Dave T. approves.
And Dave each approves.
And I vote in favor. That's a unanimous vote, 5-0. Paul?
And then with respect to 22-045, the request for a variance, I again think the criteria have been established, but I would move to approve with the same conditions that we have imposed on 22-046.
Dave each seconds.
Okay, we need a vote. Buck?
Buck approves.
Paul?
All approves?
Dave T. approves.
Dave each approves.
And I approve. Again, that's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sir, next we have 22-048.
Application number 22-048. Kayanush Yazdan Seda and Kandan Kanalu Yazdan Seda, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, Chatham, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 16 Blueberry Lane, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14F, Block 77, Lot F4. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling in a non-conforming lot via the construction of a second-floor addition. The dwelling will remain non-conforming and that it is located 23.8 feet from the street. The proposed second-floor addition will increase the building height within the required 25-foot setback. The building coverage will remain 1,872 square feet, 17.8%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 10,500 square feet in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of Protective Bylaw. I'd like to note, just for the board's record, that the zoning district for this property was incorrectly advertised. This property is zoned R20, not R40, and therefore complies with the required setback for the zoning district.
Thank you. Mr. Litchfield, before you begin, I think we're going to take a short break, if you don't
Certainly.
mind. Okay? So, gentlemen in the booth, 5 minutes. Thank you. We are back. Mr. Littrell, I had rudely interrupted you. I'm very sorry, but please continue.
Not rude at all, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the need for a little bit of a break. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of, and I would have simplified Sarah's life had I explained to her that my client is known as Yaz. So his wife is not known as Canigliaro, however. But Yaz is here, as is his architect, Lucio Trabucco, as well as their potential builder. We are here for a significant change to a house on Blueberry Lane. You've been out there, and what is there now is far from a gem. And Yaz has purchased it with an idea of eventual retirement. It has right now a fairly good-sized footprint for a small lot. So in recognition of a desire for more living space, something which his neighbors who have some reservations about, some of them have some reservations about the current project, they all agree that more living space is needed. So we decided to go up rather than to go out. We're already at 17.8% coverage, and we felt that going up without increasing the nonconformity whatsoever was the route that we would follow in order to provide that needed additional living space for eventual retirement. So Lucio, his architect, is here, and that is what is proposed. As Sarah also explained, there was a slight glitch in the legal ad, and we conform in every way except for the coverage, which will be unchanged. This is what's referred to as a second accept clause, as you know. So there is no increase in nonconformity whatsoever. What is shown there, the footprint on the Speakman plan, as Sarah's put the cursor, is unchanged. The existing house, the garage, is a foot and change, a foot and 4 inches too close to the street. So the proposed second floor, we have stepped back, so as shown there. So there is nothing that is built outside of the zoning envelope. We are aware, obviously, of some of the correspondence in the file from some neighbors who have raised some issues or some concerns, not about the additional living space, which they for which they recognize the need. And in talking with Yaz and Lucio, they are certainly willing to consider any recommendations you have, and then go back and work with the neighbors and come back with something if you find that there is a need for modifications, because Yaz is going to be living here, and he wants to get along with his neighbors, and he wants to make everybody happy. And Lucio wants to design, and their builder wants to build something that not only is approved by you, that's a necessity, but is also something which will make their neighbors content with the proposed change. So I will go through the criteria. Lucio, would you like to make a presentation on the plans, or would the board like to hear that?
I think it would be wise, even though it's possible they might change, I think if we have a presentation today.
We'll go through the criteria then.
Then we would know what had happened, yes. Okay, so yes.
Thank you. From him or for the criteria, I'm sorry.
For him.
Him.
Lucio, if you would be so kind, and Sarah can maneuver that to whatever pages you would like.
My name is Lucio Trabucco, Trabucco Architects. The approach was simple. The approach was very simple. They need extra space, for the family need extra space. So the only thing that I thought of would be to go to a second floor addition. What you see now is the existing. It's a one-story ranch, and the idea was to add a second floor to it. Pretty much stay within the same footprint, except for that area about the garage. The footprint, the floor plans are pretty much the same as the first floor. There's some additional living space above the garage. All the windows are double hung, use cedar shingles. There's some trims that I introduced to reduce some of the massing of the building. Pretty much what you see is just an extension of the existing condition. Keep the same materials, the roof the same, the windows and the exterior. finishes. So it's pretty simple addition to the second floor to the existing one-story structure.
Okay, thank you. The criteria, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the criteria begin with the question of adequacy of the site, including building coverage and setbacks. The site is adequate for the existing home built under prior zoning back in, I think, 1963, notwithstanding the existing nonconformities as to lot size and street setback, where, as I indicated, a foot and a third, roughly too close to the street. Nothing unusual in that neighborhood, nothing unusual about that for zoning purposes generally. If you approve the special permit, you can do so based on a finding that the site is adequate for reconstruction of the house on the current footprint, but with the addition of a second story. As to compatibility of size, all of the lots in the neighborhood are non-conforming, as for that matter are many of the houses. The existing dwelling is relatively small in comparison to several others in the neighborhood as to gross floor area and living area. It has a garage, obviously, but most of the other houses in the neighborhood do. If you approve the special permit, you can do so based on a finding that it remains compatible. Coverage is unchanged. That was something that we considered, and we talked a little bit about extending the house to the rear instead of going up, but then we get into the septic system and everything else, so we really can't go to the rear. We can't go to the north or the south or to the street because we'd be exacerbating the nonconformity in the street. Obviously, it's larger by virtue of the second story, but it's rebuilt entirely on the current footprint, except for the setback for the garage. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, we have two, the street setback and lot size, and there is no change whatsoever. Again, this is a so-called second accept appeal. As to suitability of the site has been developed for 6 decades. There are no conservation or environmental issues. As to scale, sighting, mass views, and vistas, what is there now has no inherent charm. It's a somewhat mundane early 60s ranch in a neighborhood with a variety of styles. There are capes, there are ranches, and there are many additions which have occurred to the houses in the neighborhood over the years. And as indicated by Lucio, and as I said earlier, what was designed was done with the goal of not worsening the existing nonconformity by remaining on the footprint, but with the added living space by virtue of a second floor. The house that Lucio has designed has cedar sidewall shingles and trim, double-hung wood-clad windows, as he advised. It doesn't have any impact on views and vistas. As to compatibility of use, there's no change. It's continued residential use. As to adequacy of water and sewer, we have town water and a Title V septic system. We already have approval, as the chair will read, from the Board of Health for nitrogen-reducing IA septic system to allow for 3 bedrooms, which is, as you know, an environmental benefit. The other criteria are not at issue. There's no impact on traffic flow and safety, noise and litter, and all utilities are present. What the question is, of course, is whether this proposed change, replacing the existing structure with a new home to be rebuilt on the current footprint with the addition of a second story, is substantially more detrimental than the current non-conforming structure or non-conforming lot. There is, as I indicated, no increase in nonconformity, no change in nonconformity. The house is designed to provide additional living space without any increase in nonconformity, and of course the EIA system is a gain. We are aware of the correspondence. I would point out, or perhaps you'd rather I wait, Mr. Chairman, until after you read the correspondence, then I can comment. But we think that you can find, in light of the criteria, that the proposed change is not substantially more detrimental, and at the same time, Yaz is entirely willing to listen to concerns and comments and to consider suggestions from you. Excuse me. So if there's a feeling in this board that some changes are appropriate, Lucio is here to listen. Yaz is here to approve those changes, and we will listen to what you suggest, and if need be, come back in a few weeks. So that is the basic presentation. Be happy to answer any questions and perhaps comment after the correspondence.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate now.
There's no one that wishes to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First, we have a note from Judith Giorgio, health agent for the town. She writes on 6/15, I have reviewed the plan to add an addition The Board of Health has approved the addition of a third bedroom with an IA septic system at this property. Therefore, I have no concerns. Then we have a note, this is from John and Alessa, or Elisa Purpura, P-U-R-P-U-R-A. They're at 221 Barcliff Ave. They write on June 21st. We are the owners of the home at 221 Barcliff, which is across the street from the subject property. When we first received the party of interest notice by mail, we were not at all surprised by the new owner's wish to enlarge the home, and we support that concept. We do object, however, to the contemporary nature of the architectural plans with an imposing boxy structure that is incongruous with the surrounding quintessential Cape neighborhood. It is our hope that the homeowners would reconsider their plans and design a home with comparable living space, which would not be in such stark contrast to the surrounding homes. Then we have a note, this is from Jean Davino. Jean writes on, well, it was received on June 21st, on June 17th. My name is Jean Davino, and I live at 24 Bayberry. The owner of the land that made up this subdivision was Otto A. Freekhorn, R-I-E-B-E-L-K-O-R-N. Who? Feeblecorn. Okay. He developed the subdivision and added certain restrictions on the use of the lots. One of the restrictions is, quote, Cape Cod architectural preferred, end of quote. If you look at the neighborhood today, you will see Cape Ranch colonial style construction. Some of the homes are quite old and most are on small lots. I fully understand that the existing house is small and the owners need more space. I have no problem with more space, but the outside of the structure does not fit with the rest of the neighborhood. Even though the existing footprint is being used, the height of the second floor is looming over the small lot and is going to be the first thing that you see turning into Blueberry. There should be a way to get the space needed and still conform to the existing look of the neighborhood. And that is the end of the correspondence. He did include a copy of, this goes back to, 1981. Additional note we have from Peter Cook. Peter Cook is at 19 Blueberry, writes on June 13th. I'm writing to object to the proposed building design, adding a second story over the entire existing structure, including the protruding garage that does not meet the straight setback requirements. More than doubles the building height and creates a structure whose design, bulk, and dimension are completely out of character with the existing neighborhood. All this is further exaggerated by the 17.8% building coverage, which exceeds the 15% maximum allowed. I've met Yaz and his daughter and would welcome them to the neighborhood. I trust that they can modify the proposed plan with one that's more compatible with existing Cape Cod-style houses in the neighborhood and meets the street setback and building coverage requirements. Okay. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to either speak, to object, or has a specific question? If so, please indicate now.
There is no one that has a question or wishes to speak in opposition.
Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one sort of legal point. Notwithstanding my profession, I sometimes do make them. The Massachusetts has an interesting treatment of restrictions that building design and things like that, if imposed before December 31, 1961, which 1955 was, they're good for 50 years. That means that restrictions imposed in 1955 expired. If they are reiterated, they don't really extend that time. So the 1981 deed, even if they had extended them, restrictions imposed after 1961 are only good for 30 years. So in any event, the building design restrictions no longer apply. That's just a matter of law. We recognize the concerns, and I also recognize that that it probably would have been useful if we had shown more vegetation on the plans and things like that to make them more attractive. As you know, there is a very, very substantial hedge along the south side lot, so nothing's going to be seen from there. When you come down Barcliff Avenue, there are a number of two-story houses. When you turn onto Blueberry, there aren't, but if you continue around onto Cranberry Knoll, there are 1 3/4 story houses. So we don't feel that the second floor is inappropriate. And of course, one of the letters suggested that because we were at 17.8%, I don't want to put words in the author's mouth, but we couldn't do anything. Well, that's why we have a zoning board of appeals. If you exceed coverage, for instance, you're not limited. We know that you can't create a new nonconformity, but we're not proposing to do that. We're proposing to build on the footprint and to provide more living space. Having said that, we would very much welcome your comments and would like to hear your questions.
Okay. Comments or questions? Questions? Dave T.
Dave T.
Microphone, David.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Dave T. here. Bill, I agree with a lot of the things you've said. You aren't expanding the footprint. You're just going up. But it's a very boxy-looking house. It doesn't really look Cape Cod-y at all. It doesn't seem to fit in the neighborhood. I realize that there are ranches in there, but out front on Barcliff, you've got really Cape Cod-y looking homes. As you go in and turn to the left down Blueberry Lane, you've got the Zebrat properties. And again, that's Cape Cod-y. I can't remember what John Feeblecon's house looks like, but I know it's the last one in.
Yep.
But I can't imagine that his father or uncle was Otto.
Otto and Walter were the brothers.
Right, but John Feeblecon was Otto's son.
Yep.
Right. I can't imagine him building something his father didn't like. Sorry. So that's the only thing that I have. If somehow it could be tweaked, it's not overpowering. Well, it's overpowering as you look at it right now, but I think it could be tweaked. And that's just all I have to say.
We appreciate that. Mr. Trabucco is taking notes.
Randy?
I agree with Dave and the letters that have been submitted. And so part of our charge is to make sure that we, the purpose of this bylaw is to manage the growth and development of the town. As you know, I don't have to tell you, you probably helped write this. And, you know, I think that's, you know, part of our duty is to make sure that it blends, and it doesn't blend. Thank you.
Dave E.
Thanks. Well, first I have a question. It appears to me, one of the notes on the elevations seem to indicate metal roof on the building and the perspective, and they show architect grade type shingles. I just want to clarify that. And I see a metal roof down in the little alcove, the entry alcove, that.
Yeah, that's there's an entry alcove right now.
Right.
And basically, I wanted to make that a feature, so that's why I introduced a metal roof. That'll be just on that section.
That's just just there, okay.
just
The
on that
notes on the
section.
other pages are not, okay.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. They're just the other ones will be just asphalt,
Okay.
shingle.
And so, I kind of have mixed feelings about this. I tend to, when making decisions here, I generally tend not to take into account the style of a building necessarily. I think, but my first impression on looking at this, and then with getting the letters from the neighbors sort of reinforce that, is in a way, it's the apparent, I think maybe the apparent massing, I would say, of the second floor. So I can see now, looking more closely at the drawings, essentially what you've done is taken a Cape Ranch and like you've elevated it by another story and kept the same proportions and everything. And Cape Ranches, and there are a number of Cape Ranches in the neighborhood, and I've never personally considered Cape Ranches to be a feature that I would elevate higher on the road than the one that's there. So I would suggest, I would suggest looking at some of the roof treatment and things, and I don't know, I mean, this would be, I'm certainly adding complexity to the design, but, you know, a steeper pitch roof using dormers and things might be more appropriate in some respects. That said, at the same time, the more I look at this, the more I think, well, I'm not so sure that this really would be out of place. I mean, I think I'd be happier if you could tweak it somewhat. But if it came to pushing and shoving, I'm not sure. I think I could almost go along with this. Also, I just did, just to see, I didn't notice until just now, you do have a couple of pages in here of the elevations that are colored and those drawings are somehow, the building got stretched out. So when they're not the pages aren't numbered, but there are two pages in here that don't look right. They're the two pages that precede perspective number 1.
Left side and front elevation, David?
Yes.
I
there's
see
two
what you're saying.
And if you look at the uncolored,
Yeah.
you see how they get stretched out, and that doesn't look better. That doesn't look good at all. So maybe somebody saw those drawings, but none of the perspectives show that or anything. I just want to
That
point
was
that out.
our, we thought it best to abandon the red gantry crane. But this seems to be sort of like the Plymouth Plantation box garrison house. I understand exactly what you're saying. That's not our intent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a good-looking house, but I'm just wondering if maybe you can, and work with the neighbors there. Thanks.
Buck,
So we're in questions, aren't we? Isn't that?
you can question, you can comment. It's both. It's a double.
Well, I got plenty of comments, but I'll wait for the discussion. For right now, I have no questions.
Okay, Bill?
And I have no questions.
Megan?
I have no questions.
Paul?
I guess my question would be, if you were not totally constrained by not increasing nonconformities, can you in fact increase any nonconformities without getting into a variance issue?
We have 3 feet on the north side, which is not a lot. We can't really, I don't think anybody would want us to move closer to the street, even though we can, particularly with a 2-story house. We have more room to the south, and we have room to the back. The problem there is the septic system and moving all of that. So we could go to the south. There's approximately 9 feet that we could go there. I don't know whether that would end up with the house that Yaz would like, but on the other hand, we're tearing it down. So moving to the south is an option. However, we can do that via special permit because we're already in excess, but there are limits to how much one can ordinarily go in that regard. But if it's a quasi-suggestion, it's certainly something we would consider.
I guess what I would say is that to come up with a more pleasing design that is not so box-like, because I had the same impression before I heard the neighbors' comments. To me, it seems to be overwhelming the neighborhood, and I would be more inclined to perhaps push the nonconformity issue and come up with a design that's more acceptable to everyone, to the extent that you can do that. But that would be my suggestion.
We appreciate that.
Okay, I think we want to go back to, I think you three have all made your comments, so I'm going to go back to Buck for comments.
Is this deliberations now?
Oh, it's comments. We are not into deliberation in any way, shape, or form. This is just comments for Mr. Litchfield.
So those three letters, to me, were very powerful. And they said stuff that we're not allowed to use for our evaluation of our decision. Cape Coddy, Mr. Feeblecorn's wishes. And yet, I read those and I listened to it, and I said, they're basically saying this is not compatible with the neighborhood. And when something's not compatible with the neighborhood, in my opinion, just mine, that means it's substantially not detrimental. It's not even close. I think you got it. I've heard people say tweak. I kind of laughed a little bit when I heard tweak. One suggestion might be go buy a house that you like the size of and sell this one. That's my comment.
Bill?
I think this is another example of the ongoing issue that we address with coverage versus mass. And I think that's something that really does need to be addressed. But in this case, I don't think that I would agree with what Buck said to an extent that that this is just overwhelming for that particular neighborhood, in my opinion.
Megan?
I would have to say the same thing. In a different way. I wouldn't say sell it and go buy one that's better, because I think it's flip, and I recognize that in this town right now, that's not necessarily economically feasible. Otherwise, I would not have asked my husband for a second story on my ranch, to which he mocked me. But I feel like, much like putting one on my house, it would create a very boxy feel, and when you turn around and look at, is it Bayberry Lane across the way? On that corner, you see what a two-story house in that neighborhood looks like. And I just feel like this is a kind of clunky. That being said, I will say that the plans probably don't do you any favors, because they're so, there's no, like you were saying, there's no landscape architecture and anything, so you can't really see what it's going to look like. And I recognize this would be a question akin to Paul's, but it was almost like when I was looking at the back of it, I was like, where's the deck? Now, I recognize you can't have a deck because then you have a coverage issue, but it just seems like you're trying to squish this giant house onto kind of too small of a lot.
Paul, did you have any further comments?
No, I had no further comments.
Okay. Well, I hate to use one word, but when I didn't get to see it until this afternoon, what's there now, and then comparing to what we see here. Sometimes folks try and, make something out of what's there. It just isn't going to work. And I know in my neighborhood, there are situations where they would have been so much better off if the bulldozer had come in and start from scratch. And that's the way I feel about this. End of statement. So, up to you.
If I could very briefly, Mr. Chairman, we appreciate your comments, and they have been heeded. We will, I don't know what Lucio and Yaz will come up with, but we very much appreciate the guidance you've provided.
Okay, would you like to make a motion for continuance until August 11th?
I would ask, Mr. Chairman, if the board would consider continuing this until August 11th. Recognizing you have a busy agenda that day, we will already have gone through the criteria, so ideally we'll be able to present you with a revised plan, having spoken to the neighbors in the interim, which may make for a shorter hearing.
Right. Yeah, it'd be really good if they could write new letters. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Paul?
I'll move to grant the requested continuance to August 11th, 2022 at 2:30 PM.
Well, that's when, yeah, that's got nothing to do with it.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need a vote on that?
Buck votes yes.
Paul votes yes.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes.
Thank you
That's
very
good.
much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Litchfield, and all of you. I don't believe we have anything else to come before us today. I could be wrong. Anybody got something up their sleeve? All right,
I will move to adjourn.
Dave Veach seconds.
all right, we'll all vote on that. Buck,
Buck votes yes.
Bill,
Bill votes yes.
Megan,
Megan votes yes.
All votes yes.
Oh, Dave Thompson definitely votes yes.
Randy votes yes?
Dave Veach votes
and
yes.
I vote yes. Thank you all. And the time is?
4:42 PM.
All right,
Oh, my.
that's official. Thank you, John.